You're listening to the Minor Detail Podcast, a place where all things community, encouragement, and lifestyle come together through meaningful conversation. I'm your host, Khaila Ariel, and I'm so grateful that you chose to join me on this journey of authenticity to serve as a link that amplifies human connection in our everyday lives. Navigating life on a daily basis can be difficult, but I am confident that together we'll be our own answer to life's minor little details that come our way. Sit back and enjoy today's episode, purposely curated just for you. Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Minor Detail Podcast. I'm your host, Khaila Ariel, and I am so excited for you to tune into today's episode. We have a very special guest joining us, and I am so excited to chat, connect, and cultivate meaningful, fruitful conversation. Today's guest is none other than the founder and CEO of Boss Women Media, children's book author, and multi-hyphenate storyteller, Marty McDonald. Hey, Marty.
Thank you so much for having me. I have not introduced myself as book author before on any platform yet. So that's so interesting to hear someone say out loud.
Listen, I hope you loved it. We have to get it
yes.
all in there because honestly, you wear multiple hats. And so we don't want to put you in any type of box, of course.
Girl,
but I'm like,
seriously, I literally have all the jobs and doing probably way too much. And I just left a lunch earlier with someone. They were like, how do you do it? I said, I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it all good. I'm just doing it. Like I have an idea, it feels right, and I'm just moving with it and really moving in a way that passion and purpose align together, and not because I'm perfecting it by any means. I'm learning along the way in so many ways.
Listen, we just opened up and you're already dropping gems. I feel like that right there has been such a learning for myself. I think oftentimes we look at life and we have the expectation of like wanting to do it all, do it at the same time, and find balance while doing it all. And I think you just summed it up so perfectly. It's like, you're not trying to do it perfectly. You're just trying to do it.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm like I said before, I'm super excited for us to connect today. And typically what I like to do just to really like dive into the conversation, I would love to hear more about you and your background. So whether that means like, you know, where you were born and raised and how you grew up, but I feel like experiences really do shape who we are now. And so would love to learn a little bit more about you in that regard.
Yeah, but I'm a Southern girl. I grew up in Tennessee, cultivated in a very small town, and have always been just obnoxiously ambitious and have always desired more. Even as a kid, I think back now, because now I'm a mom, of the things I used to do as a kid. I was innately a teacher. I was like that kid who would have my brother and my sister and the neighborhood kids around, and I would have them on the floor and I would be in the front of the room in some form or capacity teaching, right? Reading the book, showing the flashcards. Like innately, that's who I am. I've always been kind of a creator and love like design, and I would always change my room out. And so like when I think about those attributes that I had as a kid, it really has molded me into who I am today, and has allowed me to really be able to kind of glean from those traits that I really enjoy and allow them to be a part of what my business is. But grew up very humble beginnings, first college gen of my family. Didn't grow up with a ton of resources, but and in a small town where a lot of people didn't look like me. I'm a biracial woman. My mother is Black, my dad's white, so no one really ever looked like me. Mm-hmm. So identity was a big part of who I wanted to be and wanted to be around, right? And that really formed a lot of my childhood. in finding community and finding people and finding women and being connected with stories so that I had something to resonate with and to lean in. And so, yeah, moved to Dallas after college, moved to Atlanta first, then moved to Dallas shortly after, started working in corporate America and was told to just be grateful. Be grateful that you got this good job, be grateful that blah, 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 whatever that is. And just felt myself unfulfilled. And so in 2018, I exited corporate America and started Boss Woman Media as my full-time gig, and really built a brand from the ground up with no resources, no tools, no funds, into a multi-million-dollar company that impacts hundreds of thousands of women every single year, to storytell and to bring to the forefront what Black women can do, what they are doing, and how others can be a part of what we already know Black Girl Magic is.
Wow. So you told us a lot. And I say that meaning, it just sounds like you have so much life experience in such a short amount of time. You know what I mean? And I can say that without even knowing age or having any idea, just because it's like you're just getting started. You know what I mean? And you've already accomplished so much. And as you were speaking, there's so many things that came to mind. But the one thing that stood out is coming from your background. And I can kind of relate to you in a sense that, although I'm from a bigger city, I'm from Chicago, but if you're familiar, Chicago is very segregated. And so being from a predominantly, if not completely Black community within that city, you often, you feel the segregation, but you also feel the, like the lack of support, right? The lack of resources. And one thing that stood out as you were talking was how you continue to press forward, although you may not have had like an example to look to, right? Or a literal example to say like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be like. Because not only did you go to college as a first-gen student, but you graduated and successfully entered into corporate America and exited out of corporate America and started your own business that then became a multi-million-dollar business. And there's been so much success even after that. So what was that like? What was that experience like for you to say, okay, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to?
It was a couple of things, to be honest. I stayed very, very curious on things. I questioned a lot of things. And then I often put myself in spaces and places that we're not often in so that I could get exposure. And so I'll never forget the moment that really kind of transformed what I wanted to create. And then that next moment that showed me I could. I was working in corporate America, and I remember going to a women's conference. My background is restaurant marketing, food marketing. And so I remember going to this women's food service forum conference, and it was just so stuffy and stiff, and it was very black and white skirts and heels. And I just thought, and why doesn't anyone in here look like me? Like the sprinkle that are in here, right? And it's like you want to connect and yearn to them. And I thought, man, how in the world am I going to navigate this? Right? Like it just feels so foreign to me. I'll never forget that feeling. And then fast forward, probably 2 years later, I go to a conference in Atlanta. And it's a predominantly white conference. And I remember walking into it, and it felt cool and it felt relatable for my age group, but not for my ethnicity. And I thought, this is exactly what I'm going to create for Black women. It was like a feeling that came over me that was like, this is it. I know what that feeling of stuffiness and unfamiliar territory looks like, but we need this. But most importantly, we need it for Black women. And so that was kind of my North Star, if you will, of what I just had in my head of what I was grinding towards, right? And then I just became really ballsy and fearless and went after it. Not because that's how I have always been, because corporate America can dim your light, especially when you
Mm,
don't see others that look like you, right? There takes a huge amount of courage and allies that you will need to really navigate that space. I found myself really wanting to um, just like get out and do more. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what that looked like. And I just decided to bet on me. And like I said, not because I did that often in corporate, because sometimes I didn't, because I was
mm-hmm.
assimilating to the environment and different things like that.
Yep.
But I had something to prove, essentially.
No, I love that. And I think it's interesting that you kind of talked through how you battled with, I don't want to say whether or not you should leave or go, because you didn't necessarily say that, but I think that and I am someone who works in corporate America. Technically, I work in advertising. And so in that space, I feel like I can resonate with, some days, they feel positive and you feel like you're making a difference and you're making a change. And others, you're like, all right, I'm fed up. I know that what's inside of me,
Right.
is way bigger and way more fruitful than the work that I'm doing now. So what do you feel like was your, if at all, deciding factor, or what caused you to really say, all right, enough is enough, it's time for me to do my own thing?
It was really the leadership who did not lean into what my strengths were. And I didn't know how to articulate in a way that I was a change maker. I also, when I'm looking back on it, I wasn't passionate about what I was doing in the manner in which they were. So because of that, it often seemed that, like, my skills didn't translate, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and so I literally just had a spa day with some old employees,
I love
not
that.
employees, coworkers,
Coworkers, yeah.
And when I was in corporate, and we were talking, and they were like, Marty, you should send so and so a note and say Google me or da, 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 da. And I'm like, no, it's not necessary. I was like, it was interesting because they were white, and they were saying, we wish we would have stood up for you more when you weren't invited into the room. We wish we would have spoken up, but we didn't know how to do that for you, right? And I think that I didn't know how to do that for myself either, right? Because it was a foreign territory. When you are the only one, you're trying to navigate that alone. That's
Yeah,
a
that's
task within
heavy.
itself, right?
It's so heavy. Yes.
And so why I left is because I left for several reasons, but I left because it wasn't my passion. And I wanted to work on something that filled me, and that I couldn't see myself in 20 years trying to navigate those waters that just didn't look like me. And I wanted to make impact in my community. I truly want my destiny and my legacy to be, man, Marty, she changed it for Black women, right? She story told for Black women. She gave for Black women. Black women got dollars because of her, because of spaces and places she sat in, right? Not because it's solely about me, but it's solely about how we make change and room and space in our community so that we all grow, we all can eat at the table. And so for me, I couldn't do that there. And at the time, I didn't know that. I mean, this is like, I'm 4 years, we'll celebrate 5 years of Boss Women Media next year. And this is 4 years into me learning these really hard lessons and reflection and understanding. And I just knew that it wasn't for me. It was that simple. It was like, it's ain't for me. And I got to figure out how to do something else, how to fill my cup with something else. And that something else was Boss Women Media. And it was a no-brainer.
I love that. I really do, because I feel like I can resonate with a lot of those feelings. And I also think that it can be a hard decision to make, but so rewarding. Right. And so thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for leaving. But also thank you for just enduring everything that it has taken to come this far, because I could hear it in your speaking as it relates to just lessons and reflection. Because it like 4 years, you say that and it goes over smoothly, but like that's a long time. And I'm sure there are other things happening in life, and there are a lot of ups and downs, and like you said, lessons, hard, fruitful lessons, but it's still an
Yep,
experience.
absolutely.
For
Yep.
sure.
Yep. Yep.
Which leads me to kind of pivot to Boss Women Media specifically. This also came to mind as you were speaking. Do you ever, or did you, or have you ever felt like creating a business designed specifically for Black women to thrive? Did you ever find moments that were difficult, or did you ever find that outside, stakeholders, community members, what have you, may have looked at your agenda a bit, not negatively, you know what I mean? But was there any tension that you received there and saying like, I want to do this thing, but I want to do it specifically for Black women? Because I think
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. First of all, Black women are critical, right? So I'm proving to us of what I can do, because they haven't seen it before and they've not seen it done in excellence. So that's my one audience that I'm proving out, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm proving out, this is post George Floyd. Things like Black girl magic was not terms. Diversity and inclusion, what? Nobody's company is talking about that. Nobody's talking about, how do I create an equitable society? How do I make it where it looks like the women who are a part of my customer set? Instead, they're just checking boxes. I got the Latina, I got the Black, I got the white. Yep. My first experience with it is 2018. I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with my brand, how I'm gonna create, how I'm gonna continue to story tell, And I go to a conference in LA, and I meet the CEO of Sugarfina. At that conference in LA was really how I transformed my business into becoming a national brand. I go up to her. She's like on the panel talking about how Sugarfina creates these taboo gummy bears. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I'm thinking she should create a gummy bear called Black Girl Magic. Like, that would be so dope. All these Black women would come. And I had just read this Nielsen data report called Black Girl Magic is Real. It talked about the buying power and behavior of Black women. By 2022, Black women would be the highest spending consumer out of any other race, but brands were not paying attention. So I go up to her and I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of Black Girl Magic, white lady? She's like, can I even say that out loud? And I'm like, Black Girl Magic is a rallying call. And you should make a gummy bear called Black Girl Magic. Do you know how many Black women would buy that and come into your store? And she's like looking at me like, what? And so I'm like, and girl, listen, I will bring them. I'll do a tour, pop up in 5 cities, and create a whole event around this. And she's kind of intrigued. She's like, hey, send me an email, contact@Sugarfina. Mm-hmm. So I send her an email. I put this pitch together, and it took her about, I would say, a total of 8 weeks to respond, to get on the phone, to pitch it. And we went on our first national tour called Black Girl Magic. And that was really the beginning of everything. And then our first stop was LA. Okay. In LA, we packed the building out. I mean, there's nowhere to stand, nowhere to sit. And I get a phone call and we had just got our first national publication with Pop Sugar for the event. And I'm like, yes, I'm on cloud 9. Like, you can't tell me nothing. I'm like, I cannot believe that I just did this. And I get a phone call on that Tuesday, and it basically was like, hey, we didn't think it was going to be like that. Need you to kind of tone it down a little bit. Don't really need that many Black women in the store. Like, excuse me?
Wow.
Wow.
Just to pause really quickly, because I actually remember this time, I want to say, because it came to Dallas, right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get to attend, but I do remember it coming to Dallas. And I think that's when I first discovered you specifically through the tour. But if I do recall, and I don't know if Sugarfina stores are still around, but they're a bit smaller in size, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
Okay.
like it's like a footprint of probably like maybe 2,000 feet.
Okay. So
If that.
it was you guys packed the store out, and to circle back, they were like, okay, maybe not that many Black women.
Yeah. Like my employees are not ready. Like I didn't think it was gonna be like that. And so I thought, wow, well, every pop-up, we're gonna have to do the same thing over, even though she said no, we're gonna have to do it over. And and we did it over, and it was resistance every single stop. And I thought, are people really ready for Black women to be all that they can be? And I used that as my case study. And so I was able to collect a lot of data, a lot of learnings, and I was able to pitch it to Capital One. And it was my first 6-figure deal that I closed. And they took on Black Girl Magic, and has been my partner for Black Girl Magic since 2020. And really backing what Black women can do. And even though there was a much resistance that came with that partnership agreement, with what we produced, with what we were able to come against, there was so many learnings. And it showed me where the world was at that time. It's at the world is in a different place right now. And I needed to see the pre and the post of it, because the pre set me up for the post. The pre gave me the opportunity, the data, the understanding for the post. And I'm forever grateful for that experience, and just being able to understand how to navigate brands that have not had Black women as their target audience or secondary audience. And how do I talk through that to teams that may not look like me?
Yeah, for sure. And I also feel like being or having the necessary practice and experience in the beginning had you fully equipped for the post, because I'm sure
Absolutely.
that there has been a lot that has come out of like the last 2 years alone, because you mentioned this was like pre-George Floyd to now, different opportunities that have come to fruition you were prepared for because of this past experience and these past learnings.
Yep.
So what do you feel was I guess I'm like, one of the most challenging things, some of the most challenging things, but you've said the word learnings a lot. So what do you feel was the most challenging experience or learning going throughout this process of building the Boss Women Media brand?
Learning how to pivot. Learning how to pivot when the world shuts down. I remember 2020, I get this big deal from Capital One. We're going on a 7-city tour. And the week before we're about to leave, COVID happens. And how do I pivot through that, right? How do I navigate? How do I get learnings? How do I do more research? How do I transform this commitment that they've given me to equate for something even bigger, that maybe we wouldn't be able to touch the footprint of people in a space, but we could do it in a virtual way, right? And so learning how to think quick and pivot and being a solution has been my biggest learning, versus going to my partners with problems. I put and bring the solutions together to present to them for whatever those recommendations look like, so that it feels like a no-brainer. It feels like they've missed out on something if they don't do it, right?
Yep.
That has been the biggest learning, and to date will continue to be. As a business owner, you will always have to know how to pivot, how to move from A to B, but A to B isn't going to be this straight line. It's going to be squiggly. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be sideways, black, white, gray, whatever. That is a muscle that you will always have to flex as a business owner, period. And so just being thrown into it is the only way how you're going to learn.
Man, that's exciting, but also depressing to hear. And I say depressing because, you know, when you first start learning how to pivot, it's like this really strong tension where you want to fight it. And you're like, no,
Yep.
I don't want to do this. This was not the plan.
Yep.
And to know that is a never ending feeling. I'm like, man, okay, well, at least I know. At least
Yep.
I'm
Buckle
prepared.
up.
Exactly.
Buckle up.
It literally buckle up. So this was, let's say, back in 2020, once you got the Capital One deal, COVID hit. What did pivoting look like specifically? Like, what was the solution that you ended up walking out?
Yeah, so it was, how do I bring Black women the Black Girl Magic experience to their living rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I bring it to their living rooms? Who's intriguing to them? And so it was kind of like heads down in planning mode of doing that. And I was like, what's happening at home? And it was like me coming together, encompassing all things happening at home. Women are learning to cook. Women are learning to redecorate their homes, right? Women are learning how to navigate career at home, being moms at home. So I wanted to bring all of those resources together at home through celebrities, through the box that we were going to mail them that they got at their front door with all of the swag and different things like that. And Black Girl Magic 2020, we had 22,000 women sign up, 33 countries represented. And it was an incredible experience just being able to say the amount of people that we got, we would never have been able to fit into one space at all. We were able to reach a global audience.
So after pivoting in 2020, taking the time to really consider, you know, all that women would be experiencing in the household or in their homes while we were literally on lockdown, I think that took real intentionality, because a lot of what I feel like we were all experiencing was that we didn't really know what was happening in the foreseeable future or able to recognize what we needed to do next, especially marketers. Was there ever time during that period where you kind of felt off track or a little bit concerned about what the future may look like for the business specifically?
I mean, it definitely was an uncertain time. And I was trying to navigate, you know, what that looked like from, you know, post George Floyd. It was like no one really knew what was happening. Then when George Floyd came, there was an arising and an awakening and an education that I was really able to push forward through my messaging, through what I was trying to accomplish with Boss Women Media, that led to really great opportunities for Black-owned businesses and for us to be able to say we were a resource for them. And so that has been, I mean, probably the most rewarding piece of 2020, just kind of taking a step back and being able to be that data-driven resource for organizations to really glean from Boss Women Media.
Definitely. So I love that. We talked about pivoting just a moment ago, and I think that that it's more than just business life. It's also relevant in personal life. You recently became a new mother of a beautiful baby girl who is also joining us in and out of the call. Unfortunately, she's super busy, so she only has time when she has time. But
no, listen, I am not that person who has my child on the podcast, but today I am that person with my child on the podcast because she's at home sick. So yeah. I apologize.
No, and I'm honestly fine with that, because I think we need more transparency around like what's happening in real life. And I'm really big on that narrative specifically because I think we do a lot of shape shifting to fit whatever narratives the world needs to see or to show up, you know, perfect. And we kind of touched on this in the beginning too. And it's like, none of this is perfect. Like, we're literally
none of it.
Figure it out. We're literally just
if
trying
you
to
had have seen when we first started talking, I had her in a stroller, walking her around so she could be quiet in our house. Like, okay, please be quiet. Mommy needs you to be quiet.
Literally, give us the BTS. So how has this changed how you show up in the world, becoming a mother during, I mean, this is, I don't know, this is probably one of the most craziest times of my life that I've experienced, but just us as like globally, how has this become, or how has this shaped who you are today and just how you show up on a daily basis?
You know, the I learned some really early lessons around being a mom. The couple lessons that I learned was how key representation is, right? How I have to expose my daughter to that Black doctor, that Black dentist, that Black whatever that we have in her, because she's going to live in a world that doesn't necessarily look like her because of some of the resources that we've been afforded, right? So how do I create a space where she is always seen, number one? But then number two is around advocacy. How am I advocating for her to then learn how to advocate for herself? And that was probably one of the hardest lessons, because we were in the NICU for 35 days after I had her. And that NICU experience really defined me as a mom, because the doctors didn't look like me. The nurses didn't look like me, and they put me in a box of what they thought I was because of me and my husband's skin tone. And I had to learn real quick how to advocate, how to let them know who we were, what we were going to tolerate, what we were not. And motherhood has forever transformed my life in a way that I never thought would.
Definitely. And I think that it's such a shame that we're still dealing with those experiences, and for you to even have to, have had that lived experience at this point. But I'm sure, certain experiences and moments like that do fuel how you show up, just like you explained, like how you're showing up for your daughter, but also how you're showing up in prioritizing representation and storytelling. So I know that outside of Boss Women Media, you have also written children's book, which I think is super amazing. And then most recently, you started your children's clothing line, where I know your daughter is the beautiful face of. I was driving recently. I don't know what highway that is, but I saw the billboard for Olivia. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so cute. It's so cute. But it's like, it was real. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a random project that you put out in like what do you call it? Like low quality billboard, just to say like you had some type of real estate. But like it was a real thing. And I think a part of me got super excited because one, like my inner child is like, I love that, that's something that I needed. But you're really out here changing the narrative and changing the landscape of which I think a lot of what we didn't have or what didn't exist at the time. And so
I appreciate that.
No, seriously. And that's a real moment that I think I just had with myself sitting here, because it's like you've recreated this idea multiple times, but in different spaces and in different ways. How has that experience been for you?
Like I wanted to start this children's brand specifically for Black and brown little girls so that they could always see themselves and that they knew that their future mattered, right? But what I didn't realize is that I was doing the exact same thing that I started in the pathway with Boss for. I'm doing it at a younger age, right?
Exactly.
I'm storytelling for her through Olivia, the brand of clothes that has faces that look like her, hair that looks like her, right? Affirmations that we want to say to our daughters. And so it really has been interesting to navigate how I'm doing it on a younger and a smaller level. But I mean, we have big hopes for the brand. I mean, the brand is just getting started, and we want to do so many more things with how our Black little girls in this world can see themselves with the clothes that they wear, the shows that they watch, the books that they read, right? And they always know I have something that looks like me, right? I was telling this to a friend. I'm like, our Black little girls were white Snow White and Cinderella, and that's of the norm, right? Why can't our white little girls wear the Black Olivia, right? As allies, there's nothing wrong with that. We have to. That's how we create this equitable society for this next generation. It can't be so insular. It has to be open for opportunities for all. So yeah, just know that we're just getting started with it. When I'm a marketer by trade. That's what I come from. So if I'm going to create a brand, know that I'm going to create a brand. And so
100%.
I'm excited about big announcements that are coming out for 2023 with Olivia, and what we're going to do and where we're going to be, and how we're going to just continue to be that representation and advocacy for these little girls. And I don't think we can have too much of it. I don't think that we can show our Black and brown little girls too much of themselves, because they've been left out so often.
And I love that you say that, because I think there's always like this lingering thought, and it could just be me, but I also don't think I'm alone in this either. There's this lingering thought that there's the idea of like oversaturation in this lane of creating experiences specifically targeted or targeting the Black community. I won't even limit it to saying Black women, but I think I asked that question earlier about tension that you receive, because I think there sometimes can be fear around creating lanes, specifically for Black women, the Black community, because, you don't want to be looked at as negative, or you're trying to isolate, other communities and be uninclusive. But I think that there's also some uniqueness around celebrating the Black community and all that we have to offer. So that's just really
I would
amazing
even
that you
say
that.
to that is that the market is, if the market is oversaturated, that means that there's a need. And if the market is oversaturated through that need, that means it's still not being met by everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's 1,000 car dealerships, because everybody needs a car, right? Like,
right, yeah.
And it's not. And so I look at it from a total different viewpoint, because to be honest, I have struggled with the fact that there are not a lot of Black little brands. Like we have researched, there's not a lot of Black little clothing brands that shows Black little girls. So I'm like, is this not a market? Like why aren't there any? Who is my competition, right? But when there is competition and it's direct, that there's a need for it. And so I think that we as a community can all sometimes think it's too saturated, I can't do it because there's too many people, but nobody's going to do it like you. Yeah. You have a very unique perspective and imprint that you're going to put on it. That's your secret sauce and how you create your uniqueness to the oversaturated market.
100%, like snaps, all of that, because I think, again, I said it's a lingering thought in my mind, but I know I'm not the only one. And it's time to get over that. It's just time to get over that thought process and that fear. This also brings me to ask, I always get really interested in how, whether it be entrepreneurs building their business, or, if you have a side hustle and you're wanting to scale, what did it look like for you bringing on a team, or what is your day, your go-to day-to-day team look like? How has that experience been?
When I first started, bringing on a team felt like the most daunting task. Number one, I was building something that like I had created, right? I knew what I wanted to look like, and translating and sharing that to somebody else felt like, how could I share my baby with them, right? For the longest, probably up until about a year and a half ago, I was still doing social on Boss, because I was like, no, I know what the social is supposed to look like. I know that. And I was like, girl, after I had a baby, I was like, yeah, no, I can't do that no more.
I already know.
Like, I'm like, yeah, no. And so, but our team is, I have an assistant, I have a videographer, we have a PR company, I have a web designer, I have a graphic designer. Like, there's a lot of people on our team now that was not on I started off with the girl who sat across from me in corporate America, was our graphic designer at that company. And I was like, hey, can you make me a logo? And that's what it looked like, and me on Canva. But as we've evolved, our team has evolved so much. We're about to go to LA for some filming of some programming. And I'm like, I'm taking 12 people with me. Like, this is insane. When I did that Black Girl Magic Tour in 2019, it was me, my husband, one of my
No.
homegirls, and then my balloon guy who did all of my installs for me, right?
That's
Like,
all you needed. That's all you needed at the time.
so it's crazy to think I'm producing $100,000 of events, right? Versus a $15,000 5-city tour event, like what that looked like. So the team has definitely changed. The team has evolved, and in that, I had to just learn how to trust people to do what they were being paid to do. And that's what a great leader does: gives great clarity and vision, and then allow people to operate in lane in their of what they say that they can produce. And so it's been challenging from a trust perspective, being a small business owner, but it also has been eye-opening to find people so loyal and want to back the brand so much and be contributors in helping it grow.
That's awesome. And you've really hit the nail on the head, because I was going to ask you, like, how would you define being a leader? And I think that you said it perfectly. It's someone who can provide the vision and the clarity and the upfront, and really trust that you have individuals that you've brought on and you vetted to really to bring it home and to see it through.
Yep, that's it. That's it.
I love it. So a few final questions for you, because I know that you are a busy woman and you are constantly hopping from, one project to the next, or one task, I should say, to the next. How do you unplug or disconnect from the noisiness of the world? Yeah, okay. You answered it. You answered it right
Oh
away.
my
Because
God.
I want to know. I need to know. How do you, I don't want to know how you do it all. How do you separate yourself
I'm
from
going
everything?
on a vacation this week, and I told my husband, I'm like, if you don't want me to bring the brown bag, like literally I have a tote that like the brown bag. And I'm like, if you don't want me to bring the brown bag, then I have to take all of my meetings. I have to do everything so that I don't take my laptop with me. And I'm literally just getting to the point of what that looks like, right? Of like being able to unplug and cut off. And so recently I have like an office, and so I don't work at my house, because if I'm at home and I'm working, then I don't unplug. So I have to literally, if I'm coming like from the office, I don't bring my bag in the house. And if that's at 3:00 at the day or 7:00 in the day, whatever time that is, I don't bring my bag in the house, because when I enter into that garage, that time is all about all about my husband, all about our household, right? But girl, 2 years ago, like, me and my husband have been married for 12 years this year. We got married right out of college, and I did not know how to unplug when I was trying to grind, and you can hustle differently when you're single or you don't have kids, or when your spouse is supportive of that. But when different priorities come in your life, you have to take you have to look at that differently and take those responsibilities differently. And so it's a challenge, but I'm learning how to navigate through it. Another thing I would say to anybody who's listening that is like that aspiring entrepreneur who is looking for, like, who do I talk to about my business? All I want to do is talk about my business. All I want to do is talk about my goals, right? When you first start, that's all you want to do, right? But you have to realize that everybody's not there. Everybody is not there. And you find that one or two people that do want to talk about it with you, you hold them tight, but then you ask them about what theirs are too. And you make them your accountability partners. And so that was one thing that I used to want to talk about it with everybody. Everybody's not really for you growing and building and getting ahead of them. And so you got to find the right people to share that with, and use that as your accountability. Use that as your people that you learn how to unplug with. It'll take you so much further, and it's so much more rewarding that way.
Man, so good, so real. I think that is key. Not sharing with any and everyone, but being able to identify those who that you know you can trust with your baby. You said it earlier, with your baby, with your thoughts and your thought process. And it's almost just it's less about not trusting people and more about, I think, protecting yourself.
Right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So last real question I like to ask guests, because I love to hear you guys talk about yourselves and give yourselves flowers. But who is Marty and what makes her unique?
Oh, that's a great question. Marty is a trailblazer, a change maker, an advocate, a voice. But she also is someone who is figuring out how to create generational wealth for her family. Someone who's trying to make it a little bit easier for her daughter and her daughter's children. And what I leave the imprint on this world. And every day I'm hustling, I'm grinding, but I'm also really trying to be more intentional in not just the hustle and the grind, but the gratitude of how and where it got me today, and implementing that gratitude into my daughter. And so that she knows that this wasn't easy, but we have to be grateful for where we are, what we've built. And I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a Christian. I believe that God is above it all, and he is the one who creates the miraculous moments and blessings for me. And just someone who want us to be shown and show up in a way that we didn't even imagine, and love telling the stories of Black women.
Amen. All of it, literally all of it. So I need you to tell us, where can people find you? I need everyone listening, grab your phones, tablet, notes, whatever. Marty is a true gem. We need to all be tuned in. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can head over to our business page, Boss Women Media. My second business page, Shop Lelle, Olivia, Olivia. On my personal page, that sometimes I post a whole lot, sometimes I go completely dormant because life is real, which is at Marty T McDonald on Instagram.
Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for being here today, Marty. Seriously,
thank you so much for having me.
No, yes, it was such a great conversation. And the whole time you were speaking, I just felt ignited. I wouldn't even say inspired, but ignited to just, and motivated.
I appreciate that.
You know what I mean?
Appreciate that.
So thank you. Until next time, all of you guys listening in, I can't wait to, for us to host another conversation and continue the conversation. But for now, we'll talk soon. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Have a great evening.